All right. We'll start to get going here, and hopefully other people can join us as they trickle in. So good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, Back to Cyber Basics. Before we begin, I would like to do the territorial acknowledgement. If you could please change the slide for me there. Perfect. The University of Calgary, located in the heart of the Southern Alberta, both acknowledges and pays tribute to the traditional territories of the peoples of Treaty 7, which include the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nations, and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations. The City of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Districts 5 and 6. For today's Back to Cyber Basics webinar, our hosts are Mark Sly, Director of IT Security and Architecture, Luigi Riscaldino, Cybersecurity and Privacy Awareness Specialist, and then answering your questions in the chat are Sean Murray, Manager Cybersecurity Operations, and Adriana Ravelli, Manager of Government Risk and Compliance. Before we begin, I also want to remind everyone that this webinar will be recorded. This includes the question and answer period, so please be mindful of your own level of comfort when it comes to that. The recording will be distributed to all registrants next week, along with a copy of the slideshow, and will be available on the IT website after that. Please feel free to use the Q&A function to ask questions throughout the presentation, and Sean and Adriana will be watching and answering on Luigi and Mark's behalf. So if that's all of the admin out of the way, I'll turn it over to Luigi, and he can start you on our webinar, Back to Cyber Basics.
Hi, thank you, Shannon. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So today, what we're going to talk about is the following. We're going to start with the top 10 cybersecurity tips. These are tips that you can find on our IT security website, but we figured it was a good opportunity to review these tips and make sure everyone is aware of them. And then afterwards, Mark is going to speak more towards artificial intelligence and how that's impacting social engineering. And of course, we always have to remind everyone how to report cybersecurity incidents, which we will do so at the end. All right, so I will begin with those top 10 tips review. Number one, I must admit I'm biased, I'm a trainer, but please take cyber awareness training. We really recommend that because it's a ever-evolving field, and the cyber criminals out there are always coming up with new and clever ways of trying to trick people, to hack systems, and to generally wreak havoc. And, you know, there's a lot of work done on the technical side, but ultimately it's all of us, the people who use the systems, that need to be aware of how they try to trick us so that we can keep ourselves safe, our loved ones safe, and at work to keep our institutions safe, the data, its reputation, all those things. So the easiest thing that you can do to avoid getting phished or any kind of avoid getting trapped by any type of cyber attack is by raising your own awareness, by taking training. And currently, there are trainings available on enterprise learning management for faculty and staff. Students have access to a privacy and cybersecurity awareness course through D2L. And coming this fall, very exciting, when October rolls around and we have our Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we are going to be rolling out some required online training. And everyone will have access to cybersecurity awareness, plus privacy awareness. And that'll include things like the FOIP Act, elements of the Health Information Act, and more. And people who are researchers or who support researchers will also have a third component on research security awareness. And taking these courses is the best thing that you can do to try to stay cyber safe. Additionally, number two is backing up your data. I mean, this is important at home. You can have a little backup drive hooked up to your computer, but it's especially important at work. Researchers have tons of valuable data that you don't want to lose. So if that information's sitting on your computer and your computer gets fried for whatever reason, that's not great. So back it up. You can have 2, 3 backup drives, so that if something happens to one of them, the data is still safe. Plus, there's cloud backups. University has OneDrive. Use that. And the more copies you have, the safer you'll be. Now, for very large amounts of data or for very valuable data, it's just so important to have a data management plan because it's so easy. We're all so busy. It's very easy to lose track of what you've done. You think you've stayed on top, you're taking care of your backups, but maybe there's a software update that happens and it'll disrupt how your backups happen. So if you have a data management plan that outlines everything you do and how you protect your data, and then you can go back to that, make sure you're following all the steps. And if anybody ever comes back to you and says, hey, what happened to your data? You've got a plan to show them what you do. Also, if you're backing up your data, encrypt it. Always encrypt your data. That way it can only be read if you have the password. Speaking of passwords, password best practices. So passwords are always fun, right? You have a million of them to remember, and sometimes it's easy to want to use the same one or use one that's just quick and easy to type in. Well, we don't recommend that. Strong passwords are super important on anything you do, any device you use, any website account you have. You should use them, and you should really avoid reusing them, because maybe you have one awesome password, but you use it for absolutely everything. Well, if somehow that password gets compromised, they now have access to all of your accounts. So I would highly recommend not reusing them. If you're a software developer, don't hard code your passwords into the code. You don't want to do that. Find other ways, but do not hard code passwords. Mobile devices, these mobile devices, all of them can be locked using a PIN or some kind of biometric data like your face scan, fingerprint scans. Use that. Lock your data. Phones get lost. It happens all the time. And laptops get lost. Always make sure you have your mobile devices locked down with passwords and PINs. And don't share your passwords, number one. And number two, don't email them because in some cases, emails can be encrypted, but that doesn't really matter, because if you send an email to someone with a password and they walk away from their desk and forget to lock it, and somebody walks by, there's your password. So never email passwords. Strong authentication. At the university, we use multi-factor authentication, and that's great. There's so many other services out there that you use for work and for home that also offer that. And sometimes in lots of cases, it's optional. We really recommend you use it even when it's optional. And I know that sometimes people find it less convenient to have an extra step to log in, but you get used to using it, and that extra step offers so much more protection that it's highly worthwhile. I should point out, we're going to talk about a couple of tips later on for home, but all the tips I'm mentioning here are useful for home and for work. Maybe you don't have a data management plan at home, but you know, no harm in doing that. Factory defaults. What am I talking about? So like if you get a new router from Shaw or TELUS, it has a username and password. And to access settings for those types of things, you go to a website and you punch in a default username and password. Hackers know all of these default username and passwords. So I highly recommend changing them. Whenever you get something that comes with a password, and usually, like I have a printer at home and I think it was admin for the username and for the password. Not cool. So always change default passwords. And whenever you can, turn on encryption. So if you don't know what I mean, when that slide says vendor device encryption, your laptop probably has a little toggle switch in its settings somewhere where you can just choose to encrypt your hard drive. And that way, if someone doesn't have the password to get into your computer, they can't even access any of the data on that drive. So always use device encryption if it's available on your device. Now, this next one, I always laugh because my family is a little annoyed with me. I'm very diligent about updating devices, and we have a lot of devices. So I run around the house, and yes, I admit I have a little spreadsheet, and I'm like, sure, you update all your devices. But it's so important, and I'll tell you why. Yes, sometimes you get snazzy new features with an update, but far more important than that are the patches, security patches. And if you don't know what that is, software is not perfect. There's security vulnerabilities that inevitably sometimes pop up in software. And the vendors that make the software know this, and they're always trying to improve it. So all those little updates that pop up frequently, they are there to provide you these little patches to fix those little vulnerabilities. So every time you do one of those updates, you're making your software safer and harder to hack. So do it. I mean, they all have it, all your Microsoft applications, Apple devices, they all have software updates that come on a regular basis. So do them whenever you can and make your life easier with that second bullet point there. Turn on automatic updates. A lot of those can happen while you're sleeping at night, and the update is done by the time you wake up in the morning. And by the way, those are not just limited to computers and phones. They also apply to devices around your house, like your television set, believe it or not. Even I have a new appliance in my kitchen, and it's Wi-Fi enabled, and it also can get software updates. So it's really important to kind of keep track of everything that can be updated and make sure you always do so. Okay, next slide. Being aware of who accesses your systems is important as well. And I don't mean to always use research as an example, but researchers often have lots of systems, many people who work with them, like graduate students in the lab and technicians, and there's so many hands touching certain systems. And then people will leave, and sometimes accounts are still active, and they shouldn't be. Like if you leave employment at the university, your accounts will get shut down. But what about all those other accounts that HR doesn't take care of or IT doesn't take care of? So think about all the systems you have. It could be something as simple as even, you have a team Canva account and, somebody leaves your team. Remove them from your account because, if they're a disgruntled employee and they come in, they could delete all your lovely projects in Canva. You wouldn't want that, right? But also over time, it just can get really overwhelming if you don't keep track of your user list. So I'd say keep track of who's accessing your systems. If they don't need access anymore, or if they haven't accessed it in a long time, disable their account or remove it. And if you see somebody who you don't even recognize that has an account on your system, deal with that. If you're going to remote into your computers at the university, then use the university-supported VPN tool like FortiClient. It should be, if you're using a university-managed computer, it'll already be installed. But even if you're using a personal device, you can go to the software distribution site, or I forget what it's called in Windows. I'm on a Mac. On Mac, it's called self-service. In Windows, I think it's called, I forget the name of the app right now, but you should be able to get the VPN, the university endorsed VPN to use on your devices. Now, we talked, like, all these points so far mainly about security, securing your information and your devices, but you also have to think about privacy and what you're sharing. There's an awesome webinar that was held, I think it was last year, called Staying Safe on Social Media. And there's a link here. When you get a copy of this presentation, you'll be able to use that link to get to that webinar. Super important because social media is one of the largest, most easily accessible avenues of sharing personal data. So think about your privacy when you're on social media. Check out that webinar, and there's other webinars there as well that you can see. As for University of Calgary information, you should be aware that we have data classification standards. There's 4 levels of data classification. And if you're dealing with the level 3 or level 4, the 2 highest ones, which is confidential or restricted data, that's stuff that you absolutely must be vigilant about when you think about privacy. Engage with IT, reach out to Research Computing Services if you need support. And there's also the FOIP and Privacy Office, who have a wonderful FAQ page that's linked to in this presentation, and lots of information on their site that they can advise you if you have questions about should you share something. I guess that's a good point. Just always think about, would you want this information shared? Who's going to see it? Always think about that. Now, phishing emails. One of the easiest ways that cyber criminals have for accessing systems these days is through people like you and me. And they do that with many different methods. It's called social engineering. Sorry for my bubble that just appeared there automatically when I did the thumbs up. But phishing is really important because we are seeing an unprecedented number of these attacks. And not just us at the university, everyone is. It's incredible. I get text messages every day. I get phone calls every day. So it can be voice, it can be text, it can be email. But phishing is basically when somebody is trying to lure you in. They try to trick you by offering you something tantalizing or making it sound like you're in trouble with the revenue agency or your bank and you need to log in immediately. There's always a sense of urgency to these things, and they want you to click some link because they're telling you you need to confirm your account at the bank, or they delivered a package but you weren't home, or any of those things. Don't fall for them. There's training that we can offer to help you identify these types of attacks, and they are so prevalent. You see them all the time. So we have a course right now in Enterprise Learning Management, or ELM, that faculty and staff can take, called Cybersecurity IT Introduction to Phishing, and that's a great overview of phishing. I highly recommend you take that course. It's not long, and it provides a lot of good information. If you think you get an email, I'm sorry, if you get an email that you think is phishing, use the report button. So what I'm talking about is any version of Outlook you use has a report button. It might say report phishing, or it says report, and then you have to choose phishing. But use that because it alerts IT, it alerts Microsoft to potential phishing. And don't be worried about like, oh, well, what if it isn't? And I've accidentally reported it as phishing. That's okay. That's not a problem. We just really, really encourage everyone to use that button to flag any suspected emails that just seem off to you. Email encryption is also available within the university, but also if you're emailing external addresses, there is the option to have encrypted email. And if you send bulk emails, it's really best to try avoiding having clickable links to external sources in your email, or attachments for that matter. So, because a lot of software out there will look at bulk emails that have links and attachments and think, maybe that's phishing. Your email could get blocked. Or you might be emailing someone who's taken phishing awareness training, and they might think it's phishing. If you're going to travel for work purposes, you should know that the university has a whole bunch of policies and requirements related to this. And there's links here where you can read up about the international travel policy. You can learn about the university's requirements for when you travel. There's lots of really, really important things to learn if you're going to conferences, if you're going to be a visiting scholar somewhere. Check out these links. It's very important. You can also there's a loaner device program. If your own computer, you don't want to take it because there's lots of sensitive data on it, they could give you a loaner device that's really locked down. So check out these links if you're going to travel for work. Be cyber safe while traveling. Also, for personal reasons, be cyber safe while traveling, but these policies here are specific to the U of C's work and travel. Okay, number 9. There are other security practices that are really good to follow. And some devices, applications, operating systems, they reach the end of their support life. A very broad and easy to use example would be Microsoft Windows. So if you were still using Windows XP or some really old version of Windows, it's not supported anymore. And that doesn't just mean you can't call Microsoft and get support. What that means is they're also no longer patching that software. And so old software on machines, vulnerabilities will exist. Cyber criminals will find those vulnerabilities and attack them. So if you're using a device that's at its end of life in terms of support, you really want to consider maybe upgrading the device or moving to a different type of software that is still supported. And only use services that you need. I mean, our phones have so many services, location services, you name it, and you may not need all of them. It's really worth going through your devices and your software and look at the settings and see, do you need all of that turned on? Even social media, again, like you can check that webinar out, but there's so many settings, share settings in Facebook and Instagram and all of those that you really want to maybe look through, because if everything is turned on, it's sharing a lot. And you only want to trust supported trusted sources for software. So at the university, if you're using a managed machine, you can download software through those university approved channels. And the app stores for your devices, that software has been vetted as well. But like if you just go to some random website and find an application that you think looks cool, well, can you trust them? Do some digging, find out, ask questions. You can always contact us to get advice on that kind of stuff. And of course, antivirus, anti-malware software. Your managed computers will have it, but all your unmanaged devices should as well. You really, and I'm a Mac user, and people had this idea that, oh, Macs don't need it. Sure, they do. Everything does. So get yourself some good antivirus and anti-malware software. And of course, your firewall should be turned on. It's one of those settings. You can easily find it in Windows. You can easily find it in Mac OS. Check that your firewall is turned on. So I think I've been chatting enough, and now I'm going to hand the reins for the last tip and for the next couple of slides over to Mark. Thank you.
Thanks, Luigi. Great job. So yeah, number 10, being more secure using UCalgary IT services. IT is here to help you, and we have controls and protections in place to help you ward off cyber threats from the threat actors that Luigi was talking about earlier, from different vectors such as vulnerabilities and phishing and people accessing your files that shouldn't be. We're here to help you, and the only way we can help you is if you come and you use us. And we want to be open and talk to you, and you can engage us through various methods. You can talk to IT people they'll help you get it in there. Call U-Service. U-Service will help you get in touch with the right people. If you know who your zone manager is in the institution, talk to your zone manager. They will help understand what you need and help get you the help you need to fill your requirements, or whether it be for research or for academic purposes or for admin. And the University of Calgary is unique in that we have a very mature research computing services to support researchers. And they're here to talk researcher to researcher, and they have services that support a lot of the researcher use cases. And they're here to engage with you and talk with you about your researching needs, and will help you get the help you need. And so you can reach them at support@hpc.ucalgary.ca. And you can also find them at the website listed here, and it's going to be shared with you later. So it's just it.ucalgary.ca, research computing. But please come and work with us. If you're working with university data and using your home devices, that's an option, or your research device. But if you use a UCalgary managed device, that's the only way we can be sure, or I can be sure and attest to, that you have all the protections in place that we offer. And like I said, we want to help you. So, okay, next slide, please. Let's talk about being secure at home for a little bit here. And I thought we'd give you some tips for being secure at home, because we haven't done that in a few webinars. And so on the left-hand side is a service called Sierra DNS and Canadian Shield. So what Sierra is, it's the Canadian Internet Registry Authority for Canada. So they do all of our .cas and, like ucalgary.ca. So that .ca, they help us get those domain names and manage all those domain names. But they have a service available to Canadians, which is taxpayer funded, that is called DNS Firewall. And they've relabeled it to Canadian Shield, because you're shielding from cyber threats. And what this is, you can think of it kind of like your phone book. So I type in www.ucalgary.ca. It needs to go out to a phone book to find out what's your phone number, or it's called an IP address, it's your internet address. And then that's how it knows how to route www.ucalgary.ca to the right place. Now, threat actors, they'll register domain names such as www.ucalgary.ca to kind of throw people off. And this Sierra Canadian Shield will know that that DNS entry it'll potentially know that that DNS entry is bad or used for phishing or for some sort of malicious purpose. And it'll block it even before you go there. I would call this, to set this up, a little bit of an intermediate skill, no more than a beginner. And the reason why I say that is you can go to their website and we'll provide you a link to that. And they have steps on how to set it up on your home router or your home PC. But you can also call your internet service provider. And I actually just had a cousin who did this. They called the internet service provider and said, hey, I want to set my router up for Sierra Canadian Shield. And they actually walked him through how to do that. And it was very helpful. And so now he has that extra free layer of protection while working from home. And so there's 3 levels. There's private, protected, and family. So private, prevents commercialization and use of better online privacy, but it also blocks, things you probably don't want. And protected includes all the features of private, plus it blocks all the malware, botnet, and phishing sites. And then family blocks all the previous, plus adult sites if you don't think people who are on your home network should be going to adult sites. That's a choice you have to make. And then on the last point here is they do have a mobile app that can protect Canadian smartphones, and go there and check it out. But I think for working at home, this is a great free service that the Sierra is offering to Canadians. And so check it out. And like I said, you can always phone your internet service provider to help you get it set up. Okay, so on the right-hand side, just some tips about being at home. On your home PC, you want to run an antivirus and you want to turn on your firewall. It is really important for both of those because, antivirus is going to catch, the most common threat techniques or malicious files or malicious sites that you might be going to. And your firewall, if you go into a Starbucks or wherever you go and you hook onto that public Wi-Fi, you want to make sure your firewall's turned on and that you're using a VPN. So that, like I said, that goes for both work and home. Same concept, same rules. And really all the top 10 security tips that Luigi went over can apply at home as well. They're kind of general tips. So being cautious online, you want to make sure you review your privacy settings. It's really, really important because it's your choice. Like they bring up privacy policies that you need to read, and they're pages and pages and pages. Apple simplified it, and so has Android, where it shows you kind of like what data is the app accessing or what data are they interested in you in, and then you can choose whether you're comfortable with that. And the webinar that Luigi was referring to last October was called Tick or Treat. And Leanne Wu and I myself gave one on social media and privacy concerns. It's a really good webinar. I suggest you check it out if you're interested for yourselves or for your children or for your parents or grandparents. It's a really, really good webinar to watch. So be cautious. Make sure you review your privacy settings. Choose what you're comfortable with, as it is your choice. You have a choice to be on TikTok or not. You have a choice to be on Instagram or not. And are you comfortable with the information you're sharing? And one really good tip that Leanne gave last time was like, before you post, just wait 10 minutes. Because, in 10 minutes, you might be like, you know what? That's inappropriate. Or, you know what? I don't want that information out there about me. So it's a little tip from the last one there. Using secure connections. So you want to make sure that when you go to websites, they're secure. And in your web browser, it'll tell you in the URL band at the top, where you type in the www.ucalgary.ca, it'll say whether it's secure or not. And if it says not secure, there's probably a problem, and maybe you don't want to interact with that site for such as like giving your credit card or giving any personal information or anything like that. Educating yourself at home. So you can use our website here at it.ucalgary.ca, and then you can click on IT security. Lots of great tips for being secure at work and at home. Now, at home, there's a government-funded service called getcybersafe.ca. And at getcybersafe.ca, there is a lot of useful tools for parents, for children, for your grandparents, that they can go there and you can give them videos, and it's supposed to be in a user-friendly format and understandable format that anybody should be able to consume it. And you can go there and get tips for, like I said, for your children or education, or how to deal with cyberbullying and things like that, and harassment online if your children are having to deal with that. And it's very unfortunate if they are. I'm sorry. But there's good tips there that they can help you out with. Okay, next slide, please. Artificial intelligence, that's what AI stands for on this slide. So artificial intelligence, so wonderful, great, it's changing, the world's going to change, I agree with that. It's moving at a breakneck pace, and it's the dumbest it's going to be right now, right? It's just going to keep getting smarter. So, and what it does is it impacts the threat landscape for higher education. And I'm only going to speak to the cyber side here mostly. And because as it evolves, the threat actors are developing more sophisticated techniques, and they're getting faster at it, and they're getting smarter at it because the tool's doing it for them. And so they can write well-crafted emails where in the past we were looking for like a spelling mistake or like bad grammar. That doesn't exist anymore because of Chat GPT and Microsoft Copilot and things like that that are out there to help people, which threat actors are people, and to write better emails. And it also helps them write code to access vulnerabilities in software that you don't patch, or hardware that you don't patch. And the hardware can be anything in your house. It can be your thermostat, it can be your TV, your washing machine, sometimes even your fridge, right? Like if you have the fridge that kind of monitors whether your milk's low, and like, oh, you don't have any milk in the fridge, let's put that on the grocery list and text it to me. And so that really exists. And so, like you want to make sure that you're updating that software and make sure it's set to automatic updates. And then you kind of don't have to worry about it. Set it and forget it kind of thing, but it's still always good to check up on it. Now, at government levels, they're doing lots of policy work around AI, and it's ongoing. There's lots of stuff coming out. The European Union just released their framework, and there's more coming. And it's really, really important work. And like I said, AI is moving at breakneck speeds, and it's getting ahead of policy. And we're working here on it too at the university. I can tell you that senior leadership's thinking about it, and we're working on it, and we'll have something out when we're ready. The one thing to note is if you share information with artificial intelligence systems like ChatGPT or other ones, you are at an increased risk that the information you put in there could be collected and used. And it might be used by the engine and given to somebody else. And so you want to make sure you're careful with the information you expose to it, and don't put your credit card in there, and don't put your SIN number in there. There's some things you want to think about, and don't put your private information in there. And these things are trained, and it can make incorrect assumptions in the model, and they're called hallucinations. So it'll be like, hey, Mark Sly won this medal in 1955 or whatever. And it's like, wait a second, no, I didn't win a medal in 1955. And so, it can make stuff up or mislead you. And so you want to be really careful about that. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so social engineering and artificial intelligence. I kind of touched on it a little bit on the last slide about how they better phishing, better techniques, can access vulnerabilities. It writes code for them, so it makes it easier. The other thing they're doing is called a deep fake, and that's where you have a voice or video that mimics a person you may know or you do know. And it could be somebody from work, it could be your grandfather, your grandmother, it could be your child, and they'll use that to leverage you into thinking it's them, whether it be over the phone or a video call if they get that far with you. And you might believe it. They're pretty good. And so you want to make sure that you're aware, and it's always that trust would verify, like, is this really the person calling me? And maybe send them a text message and be like, is this really you? Or give them a call on the other line before you wire them $4,000, right? And, you know, it was in the paper not too long ago where I think it was a company over in an Asian country that got outed by like $25 million because the threat actor was able to use artificial intelligence to mimic some of the board members, and they were doing a transaction and they approved it, but they gave them the wrong account number and the money went to the wrong place. And so, you know, this really is happening. And so you wanna make sure that you're aware of deep fakes. And unfortunately, people are leveraging this for a malicious purpose now. And I don't mean to scare you with that information. I really want you to care about it and care about your privacy and care about being informed on this. That's the key message to take away from all of this. Is it's not scaring, it's really caring, because all of this stuff is important at work and at home. Next slide, please. Okay, reporting cybersecurity incidents. You know, we've just made a change in how, the reason why I wanted to go over this is we just made a change in how we're reporting phishing emails. And so we actually don't have an email address for you to report them to anymore. We have a button in Outlook where you can say report message and you pick the phishing one. And, or if you're using the Outlook app on your telephone, you can say report junk, and then it actually comes up and it says, is it junk or phishing? It's kind of weird that it says report junk and then you got to pick phishing, but that's how it works on your mobile phone if you're using the app. And if you're in the Outlook web interface where you're going to the webmail version in your web browser, it's just a report button. You say report and then you pick phishing and it goes off. And what that does is that helps it make it easier for people to report messaging. And it also enhances our ability to say, if a automation system, if this many people has reported it, Microsoft, we have a problem, it might go and auto clean some things up for us. And so it makes it better on multiple fronts. For all other cybersecurity incidents, we want you to submit a ticket online, and you can do that at ucalgary.ca/IT. And then there's a link there that says how to report a cybersecurity incident. And you can put a ticket directly into the cybersecurity team. And you want to make sure that you do report them, because if something's reported faster and we know about it, it can reduce the impact if it's something serious significantly. And so, you know, if your workstation gets infected and we catch it before it gets anywhere else, that reduces the impact of it spreading to other devices in our system. And that's how these threat actors move in. It's called lateral movement. And so they get on one system, they figure it out, they get some credentials, and then they move to the next system and the next system and the next system, and they grab data and they extort us. But the faster you report it, the better we're able to respond to it and realize how big the bread box is. And again, you can contact your local IT zone manager, and you can always phone user service for help and ask for escalation. Okay, next slide, please. Here's a bunch of useful links, and we're going to share the PDF with you. And so please use those links and learn some more. And I really appreciate you all coming to the webinar today and getting introduced to cybersecurity basics again. We did that for a reason, because we've been experiencing higher than normal phishing volumes at the University of Calgary. And, you know, threat actors, they try to leverage the basics because it's the easiest way in. So, you know, thanks for learning with us today. And like I said, keep caring and keep being vigilant. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
And I think we'll take some questions now, right, Shannon?
Yes, absolutely. If anyone wants to ask a question to one of our hosts, please raise your hand, and I can get that sorted for you, or you can definitely put it in the Q&A as well, and we can talk about some of the things going on. I know we've already answered 21 questions throughout this webinar, and we have a few more that are being answered as we speak. So yeah, just let us know if you have a question you'd like to ask to our panelists.
Yes. see one question in there about, if we get hacked, do we call Calgary IT? Definitely. If you're working with Calgary data or Calgary managed devices, you can use that support page we talked about earlier at ucalgary.ca/IT. If it's your home PC, I would definitely, reach out to your local IT company that you use, whether that be, Geek Squad or whatever for your home PC, and they'll help you out. But if it's a UCalgary managed device or UCalgary data, yes, please contact us.
I see a question in the Q&A that I actually just asked not long ago about shared inboxes, like if you have an account for your team, for instance. And you're right, currently the phishing button, that way of reporting doesn't exist for shared accounts. But, and Sean, please correct me if I'm wrong, I think we chatted about it. That is coming, it's forthcoming, that there will be the ability to report for shared inboxes as well. In the meantime, since we don't have the email address anymore and there isn't a report button, then you can use the form that Mark was talking about on the previous slide, and you'll get a copy of it to report a cybersecurity incident. You could do it that way for shared accounts.
If I'm using a third-party mail client, yeah, that's a good question as well. So UCalgary only supports Microsoft Outlook. And so unfortunately, I don't believe there's any integrations or anything we can support you with if you're using an alternative email client, but please use Outlook if you can. And, I know some people like to use alternate forms, and we have a lot of people who like to use text-based ones as well. So when I say a lot, I'm talking like under 10, but, people do want to use the email client they want to use sometimes, but you can always go to the web version, the webmail version. So you can go to webmail.ucalgary.ca and you can report it that way. And you can still use your Apple Mail or whatever, but if you have a phishing email and you really want to report it, which I strongly recommend you do, just you can go to the webmail version in the web browser, and that would be the best way to do it.
And that's
How
probably
effective is blocking a sender from emails or texts? It depends. So like if it's just an individual that you want to block, you can block their email or label them as junk. It'll just go into your junk mail going forward. Now, if they change their email address or something like that, there's not much we can do about that. But if you block them, it'll work. And then for text messages, if you block the phone number, your phone will not allow phone calls or text messages from that number going forward anymore. Sometimes it'll ask you to report it. And if you think it's spam and your phone says, hey, can block and report, then yeah, choose that option, because then it lets the carriers know that number is being used for nefarious purposes. I think I saw one in there about a staff meeting looking for some, safety moments and stuff like that. Yes, we can help you out with that. There is some safety moments available on our website, and Luigi is also available for department meetings and stuff like that too, which is coming more. But yeah, please, you can always put a ticket into the governance, risk, and compliance team, and we'll see what we can do to help you with awareness training in your department meetings or your team meetings.
absolutely.
Yeah, so I see another one there for, is it risky clicking the unsubscribe button? Yes, sometimes that can be abused. But if if it's an e-letter, e-newsletter that you're aware of and it's a legit one, if you click that, they do have to remove you from their mailing list. Now, if it looks funny and suspicious, then report it as phishing. But if it's one you know of, and it's one you registered for originally, then you can click unsubscribe pretty safely. Yeah.
Just on that point, for all legitimate businesses, obviously. Castle requires people to give the unsubscribe in all of their emails. If they send out a marketing email and you receive it and you didn't sign up for it, then you can look at cash flow legislation to basically fight back against that spam email. So. And for those of us
Good
who
point.
are sending emails from the University of Calgary, knows about the Marketo situation, and anyone needs to take privacy training, we also are offering that right now, along with future Marketo training for that.
I
So
was going to answer the question
Castle.
that popped up. Oh, sorry, go
Did
ahead.
you go ahead? I was just going to say
No,
Castle.
I was, yeah.
That's our Canadian anti-spam legislation. And so that's you should not receive emails that you do not sign up for, or you should have a method to unsubscribe from emails you did not sign up for. And that's what Castle is in a very short explanation. Sorry, Luigi.
No, you beat me to it.
Okay. Great, thank you.
That's great. Just a reminder to everyone that there will be a copy of the presentation PowerPoint slide as well as a copy of the recording sent to you next week, probably later next week. And then sometime after that, it will be available on the IT website, which we also have listed in the PowerPoint slides. But as you did register, you will receive a first copy of this.
Okay. Thanks very much, everybody, and have a happy and safe week and a cyber safe week.
Thank you very much for attending, especially over the lunch hour. Have a great day.
We have a raised hand.
Oh, we got a raised hand? Okay, let's take a question.
Where? Oh, did they lowered their hand. Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. I think that's good for today. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for joining us.
Take care.
Bye.